So I am on the precipice of 40 years old. I'm knocking on the door of 40 as we speak. And anyone who is 5 years younger than me, anyone who is 5 years older than me, they will not know why I hold this movie, Blade, so near and dear to my heart. But for a generation, for a fraction of a generation of us, Blade is something close to a religious experience. Blade was at a time when superhero movies simply did not exist. Blade was at a time when everyone thought that to have a superhero in a film, what it meant was it had to be the campiest thing you have ever seen. Blade came along and changed all of that. Blade came along and let you know they can dress in black leather, they can kill things, and they can be very, very serious. That is why this project from Marvel terrifies me. The first time that it was announced, I was pretty on board. I thought, it may be something that's going to be not as good as the original, but if you can give me 65% of the feel that Blade gave me, I'll take it. I will take it. And then Marvel started going downhill precipitously, and it seemed, well, this movie might not ever happen. I was relieved. It appears that is no longer the case, and it will eventually happen. In an article titled Marvel's Kevin Feige Talks Scaling Back, Losing Kang, and His Text to James Gunn After Superman, subtitled Ahead of Fantastic Four First Steps, the studio boss engaged in a freewheeling conversation with journalists where he spoke extensively about the stumbles of the post-in-game content boom, why Miles Morales won't be coming to the MCU anytime soon, and what's going on with Blade by Boris Kitt and Pamela McClintock. Guys, you have to get better at titling things. That is an introductory paragraph. But we get this. Blade is being sharpened. Again. How clever. What's the holdup with Blade? Well, and then we have the quotes from Feige. The obstacle was Ryan Coogler called and said, "We'd love some costumes for Sinners." And we said, "Take them, man. He's our good friend. Take our costumes. We'll hold off on the movie." Feige was, of course, joking, connecting Sinners to a version of Blade that was recently being developed, one that was set in a Prohibition era, just like Coogler's original hit earlier this year. Feige confirmed that there had been 4 takes of Blade that had been developed over recent times, 2 that were period, 2 that were not. Marvel has now landed on modern day, and yes, Mahershala Ali is still attached. He didn't reveal a timeline for Blade, but did say that he and Coogler have a timeline for Black Panther 3. Now, Coogler, I think, is being invoked here at the end just because he was mentioned earlier. I don't think Coogler has any connection to Blade. From what I can find, the supposed director of Blade is Chad Stahelski, which we will get to in a moment. One thing that makes me nervous for this project is, why did they decide on a modern day? That might sound like a frivolous question. It might sound like a question with which you agree to their premises. Why would you want to set a Blade movie in the 1920s? Why? What's going on there? It's going to be much more difficult to infuse today's politics in a movie that is set in the 1920s than it is to infuse those same politics into a movie that is present day. It'll stick out like a sore thumb. They're looking for it now. Probably they won't catch it in a modern day adaptation of Blade, but if it were set in the 1920s, it would be much, much easier to point out all of the things that are too modern you're putting in there. And not only that, you would have the means to be able to coach them out of the movie without sacrificing your woke card, Mr. Feige. So this terrifies me that they're going down that path anyway. They're going down the modern day path anyway. One of the rumored iterations of this film was one where, well, Blade wasn't the main character. Blade's daughter was. At that time, it was, would there still be Wesley Snipes in it, right? All of these questions. But supposedly, that is one of the rumored iterations of Blade, that it was basically a movie about Blade handing over the idea of being Blade to his daughter. Who wants to see that movie? Not without an introduction. Look, I loved Logan. Loved Logan. Great movie. Had to do with, with Laura. And there was no history of Laura in the MCU. The character in the comic books is similar to that from what I remember, but not exactly. So not only are you putting that movie about Logan and his daughter, but you're kind of changing a couple things along the way. It was a great movie. It was a great movie. It was the closest to a comic book iteration that we have ever had of Wolverine. It was a great movie. So everyone was fine with it. Who wants to... Blade has a daughter? I don't even know. Blade had a daughter. There was only one Blade. There's ever only going to be one Blade. That is how I think of Blade. So let's look at the supposed director. And by supposed, I don't mean this in a diminutive way. I just mean right now, that's who the director is. We've been through a few. Chad Stahelski. In 2014, Stahelski co-directed the action thriller film John Wick along with Leach. Well, we're off to a good start. Based on the screenplay by Derek Kolstad, the film starred Keanu Reeves and Michael Nyqvist, who was released on October 24th. It was released on October 24, 2014 by Summit Entertainment, grossing over $88 million. Stahelski acted as a sole director for the 2017 sequel, John Wick Chapter 2, and again the third film, John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, and the fourth film, John Wick Chapter 4. He also served as a second unit director for the reshoots of Birds of Prey. Now, we're seeing a couple problems. In 2021, Stahelski returned to the Matrix franchise for its fourth installment, Matrix Resurrections, making a cameo appearance as Trinity's husband. Now, I don't know how you feel about any of these projects. John Wick to Birds of Prey to The Matrix. Here's something I know. That's not all that comforting, because he doesn't have a whole lot of stuff going on here, right? You go back and you find some of these Marvel projects, and they are that way, right? What had James Gunn really done before Guardians of the Galaxy? But there's others that are not that way. Kenneth Branagh and Thor, for example. It's a tough line to walk, right? Everybody has to get... To be big, you have to get an opportunity somewhere along the way, and you'll never know if you're sitting on one of those big directors if you never give them an opportunity. It would seem to me that the reason this guy is, for the most part, in the chair is because of the John Wick connection. That's cool. I hope there's more, right? I hope there's more than just the action scenes going on here. Blade was great for many different reasons, and I just don't know that this iteration of Marvel can get that right. I don't know that this iteration of Marvel can get anything right, if I'm being quite honest. I don't understand what they're doing with anything anymore. Look, maybe I'm not the target market, and that's fine. But it seems they haven't found a target market. It seems they don't have a target market. Because no one is excited for these projects. Anyways, that's what I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with others. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more in the future. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.